Hey everybody, it's great to see all of you here. If we haven't had a chance to meet, I'm Drew. I lead the engineering team at Datum, and really excited to just give you some highlights from the last month or two, and then talk about what's coming up, and give you kind of a view into some cool things we're doing to help build our platform using Claude. Um, So yeah, and this can be super interactive. So please, interrupt and ask questions or offer feedback. You can go to the next slide. Oh yeah, we did number one. We're good. Awesome. So February we bucketed in our what we dubbed our 1.2 release, named after John Blankenbaker. If you're new, we name our releases after influential people in the world who have introduced some kind of change or left their mark. And John invented the first personal computer called the Kinback. It's a really interesting story. I encourage you to research him. The biggest headline was that we got our desktop app out the door, and this unleashes functionality on your machine to actually do things in the Datum network, which is pretty exciting. The only thing it does at the moment is it authenticates you and gives you a local tunnel to the outside world. So if you've got something running on localhost, like an app that you're trying to develop and let others see, then you can get a public host name and share that with them. And that is super useful. It's not the only thing that we plan to do, but it's a great use case to just basically kick the tires on our network and land some connections and get some bits flowing through it. And that alone has already just given us so many great bugs to chase and fix. So I really want to give props to Zach GPT out in California for a lot of just grinding away on some really tough distributed systems problems. So thank you, Zach. Um, and then our uh, evolving story around, all those tunnels uh, go through our edge, which right now is just an Envoy proxy. And so the when you create a tunnel, it actually provisions a proxy to create a connection with Iroh. Obviously, you can do other things with Envoy, primarily regular HTTP traffic. So if you want to just proxy an endpoint anywhere in the world, you can create what a proxy in what we call just our AI edge, and that is now sort of more fully intertwined with our WAF that's based on Coraza. So now, whenever you create a proxy, it's protected by best practice OWASP and other kinds of filtering. So we've sort of wrapped that up into this thing that we call the AI Edge that will steadily gain more functionality. Yeah, and the big theme there is just connections and being able to use the network. Uh, if you're again, if you're new to Datum, we obviously are building this open network cloud. But one of the interesting things about our company is the way we're doing it. And whenever you build a cloud or any kind of SaaS, the service provider, you really need a pretty extensive control plane. A lot of people, all of us have been there, right? We focus on the business problems and then realize we need all this plumbing underneath. And because this is not our first time doing this, we said, why don't we invest more heavily in the plumbing alongside the main product? And so we've wrapped up kind of that business operating system in this package we call Milo, and essentially Milo is leaning fully into Kubernetes. And the reason we do that is because we run a distributed network, and so it is a distributed system by default. So, having done this in the past, we know that we are going to have things that need to talk to each other, and rather than invent our own bespoke distributed system, which is actually pretty hard, let's use the lingua franca. I don't think any of us would call Kubernetes perfect, but what it is very ubiquitous and really well understood after 11 years. And so that uh, that investment is actually paying off, and we're really gaining velocity every day. And I'll save some of that for when Scott talks in a little bit because it's pretty cool. Um, but more specifically, in this past iteration, we really turned the crank on our operability, and that looks like taking kind of the Kubernetes audit logs and then putting this really powerful activity API on top of those, so that really you can query and get observability into anything that's going on in the cluster. And that actually is its own open source project, which you can't see from the link there, but we'll share these slides and give you links. And then we also have the first bits of our search platform. So as you all know, search is another thing that you just expect on any platform. And we definitely need it internally when we're supporting customers and users and just looking at things going on the platform. So what we did in sort of this phase one is we kept it really simple. We're just going to search users and orgs, and and that gave us a chance to prove out the underlying infrastructure, which is pretty cool. It listens to activities and it indexes live. We even have a reindexing process as well. So we kind of solve some of those. If you've ever done anything with search, it solves some of those problems that if you get them right, or if you get them in there early, like it really speeds things up. So now we're gonna build on that and link to other resources in the cluster that are a little harder to get to. And then we have also invested in our CRM capabilities. We're not trying to build a CRM, but in order to run a platform for customers, you really need to be able to interact with customers and keep information so that we can serve them well. So we have sort of a base level of CRM style resources that we can have contacts and notes and reminders and just those kinds of things to make sure that from a back office standpoint we're able to support users well. And then, of course, the best thing about Milo is that this is all open. We said, hey, why don't we build this thing and give it away and build it with the rest of the community? So it's really something that we're hoping for others to contribute to and help build it together, especially in other contexts, other businesses where we can gain the economies of scale together, and we don't have to solve all the problems, and you don't have to solve all the problems. And then again, on the operability theme, we just made a lot of improvements. Some of those found via, implementing new features and running new connections and just finding all kinds of fun issues in the platform. And then some of them are, things that we have to do running any platform, right? So staying current on versions. I won't spend too much time on these, but the Sentry upgrade actually is really interesting. If Scott forgets to talk about that later, we can ping him. But essentially all of the fun things that we never get around to and we have to devote a lot of time to is staying current on versions, and we're finding some really great leverage with AI to do that in a pretty deterministic and pretty reliable way, which is fun. And then we also looked ahead to things that are on deck. So more on Milo, like what does the story of Milo really need to evolve? How does it need to evolve over the next 3, 6, 12, 18 months? Because it's very easy to not build the things that you need to build that are going to make other things possible. And so we've kind of mapped out that dependency tree and are able to forecast the future a little bit better. So we'll distribute that as soon as we clean it up and get it into a good format. We've also looked into so we have some exciting conversations going on with partners in the compute and storage space to enable that functionality on the platform. And then our Galactic VPC, which we're continually, getting our scope into focus so that we can start delivering that capability. So on that note, you can go to the next slide. That's the major theme of our next month, or this month technically, that we're calling Dolores, after Dolores Huerta, who was a tireless advocate for labor rights and created the National Farm Workers Association. So you broke new ground. It's just a wonderful story, and a wonderful human. Um, Such a great honor to name this sort of groundbreaking functionality for Datum. So just to catch you up, we had a POC kind of last half of last year, which basically stitched together a basically IP space using SRv6, and we kind of got it working at like a Linux system level, and just regular kind of networking using regular interfaces. Now we're extending that to really work on our edge and in our control plane. And so there's a long list of kind of what we need to sequence and attack. But just to give you a really brief overview, we've got the early kind of signs of life of our private backbone. So we've actually got some hardware en route to locations. I guess I shouldn't say signs of life because it's not operational yet. Signs of life of having it. So we've got hardware en route. And that's going to allow us to basically stitch sites together and actually get traffic off the internet, number one. And then we're going to start landing connections. And unsurprisingly, we're going to just do that with Iroh at first, because it's kind of our favorite Swiss Army knife, and it's such a great tool for punching through networks. And it's kind of the tip of the spear for the kinds of things that we can do when you build a network, a new network with today's technology, right, and tomorrow's technology. And so that will allow us to basically, from an environment, create a connection, an arbitrary connection to a resource over the internet. So whether that's a database in another provider, or S3, or another part of your distributed application, or whatever it is, we can basically do that pretty cheaply, thanks to Iroh. Now I know I started this by saying we kind of have the early bits of our backbone. That's kind of happening in parallel with this. So at first, the tunnels are only going to transit the internet because we don't have the backbone yet. But that's okay, because just having a secure connection, even if it transits the internet, is still pretty useful, especially if you're in a geographically close location. And that this
something there, Drew?
you can, yeah. I was going to say this slide. I added a couple of other bullets to it. Yeah, go ahead, Zach, and then I'll say a couple of the words.
Well, we suspect, based upon talking to most of our customers, that it's not just that their traffic is going to go over the internet, it's going to primarily go over peered connections between our edge and cloud providers where people's applications are hosted. So luckily, we don't have to traverse a whole lot of different places, but people do want an overlay where they can start to control and add VPC-like capabilities, even though you're not really solving for a kind of in theory, a throughput issue, or even kind of public internet per se. It's routed internet. It's just usually from one router to the next in the same data center. But being able to give people connectivity from a VPC out or from an edge in. Now, obviously, we want to help optimize that. What we think after we see a bunch of traffic, one of the really cool things that V5 over at Iroh and the team has done, that Iroh gives us, is a huge amount of telemetry. And the whole problem of, I'm trying to debug a connection from an end user, a client, an app, back to some other place. I don't know if any of you are network people, but you've probably run into a support ticket or something where somebody's complaining about, I couldn't connect, or it was super slow, or the throughput was bad, or there was an issue. and then you get the support ticket, and then like you look 15 minutes later and it was some transient network issue, and you spend, 2 hours debugging to find that you have no information about anything, and you ask people to tell you when it happens again, and then you rinse and repeat the cycle. So what we're really interested to do is get some of the telemetry, that comes through as we start to see where connections land, where people want to connect an increasingly diverse number of applications to an increasingly diverse number of, origins or cloud destinations. So that's kind of where I just wanted to add a little color there, because the Galactic VPC is an SRv6 overlay, right? That effectively encapsulates on top of, public internet. So we think that's acceptable for now to give us that telemetry. And then, we'll move into kind of dedicated circuits or backbone connectivity where we think that's useful. Okay. Sorry, just wanted to add a little bit more packet color.
No, that's great. And I didn't explain exactly what Galactic VPC is, which is, pretty crucial to this story. Basically, cross-provider private network. That's essentially the easiest way to explain it. So yeah, thanks, Zach. And so some early kind of work that we need to do there is some we need to finish off our machine accounts so that we can have essentially connections be able to auth to other things, and so those are non-human by default, and we need to make agents be a first-class citizen on the platform as well, and that gets into some evolving auth story, but
well, that's actually Drew. Sorry to interrupt yet again,
yeah, go for
but
it.
that's earlier. Like one of the main reasons we did a desktop app was not because we just want to desperately be in the desktop app maintenance business. Although there's some really cool tech in terms of our framework that makes it surprisingly easy to be in the cross-platform desktop app business. We're really practicing, and we're able to do identity for those connections. Okay. And the identity right now is still human. You OAuth, right? Bops you over, download the desktop app. It's like, oh, connect to Datum. You OAuth into Datum. Boom, you get your connection, your authorization token back. Good. We need to move that next to machines, right? Which aren't going to have kind of a user-driven OAuth flow, right? Sometimes you'll be able to go get an authorization token, but other times you need to embed it for a machine or an app. And some might even need higher velocity. So just wanted to say that that's a big lift for us, is to move from we can make connections to we can make like identity-based connections, which I think is becoming increasingly important. And now we got to move that to non-human flows. Pesky humans.
Great. Another thing we'll need to be able to do is provision IP space, which, in order to give us and other builders internet superpowers, we actually do need to handle all that complexity underneath. And we've been very underwhelmed with the sort of status quo with IPAM. And so we're going to just bake that into the platform. And of course, that'll be available to all of you. And then we need to scale out our BGP story, because right now it's kind of, the easiest thing, simplest thing that can work. We need true route reflection and be able to scale there. So that's some exciting work coming up. I just wanted to thank Scott for a lot of and Josh Reese, who's on this call, a lot of the early work here and discovery work that's ongoing to kind of scope this and take steps to make it real. It's really exciting. I also want to call out Jose. He's on the call. He's one of our lead Milo engineers, and he's been doing a fantastic job. A lot of the stuff I was talking about before, he had a big hand in. So thank you, Jose. Okay, any questions on any of kind of the ongoing work before we shift gears, do some demos?
Demo time.
Awesome. All right, well, Scott, you can take it away.
Cool. So today I'll just be going through really my usage of Claude Code. I've been using AI for I think well over 6 months now. I was originally bouncing between different tools, using ChatGPT originally, then tried Claude out for a little while, mainly the desktop app. Then moved into Cursor because that was the new hotness. And then really like started solidifying on Claude Code around, I think, 4 or 5 months ago. But it wasn't really until like the last, month and a half, 2 months that started finding, myself getting productive with it. And if you guys haven't heard, there's a project out there called Everything Claude Code. I use that project to get up to speed on really like how you can leverage Claude effectively at scale. And I'm going to share my screen. So what I was able to do is I was able to put together a Claude Code plugin with the idea that this Claude plugin would understand how we work at Datum, how we build software, how we build systems, how we document code, how we do anything. And this has two plugins today. There's a platform plugin that's mainly focused on engineering. And then I'm also playing around with a go-to-market plugin that's focused on like product discovery, strategy, and customer support. And these plugins are designed to help really with the product development process and help give really like engineers across the team or anyone across the organization the ability to at least start iterating on features and discovery stuff all without burdening down others. And so the way I've kind of structured this, it's very similar to Everything Claude Code, where there's different agents that are solely focused on different responsibilities throughout the life cycle of product development. And so you've got agents that are focused on, just planning and understanding how do we architect software? How do we build systems? What are the things that need to be kept in mind when doing this stuff? What kind of skills does that agent need to do its work? What are the kind of questions that the platform architect agent should be asking the user when thinking about these problem statements? And how does that architect agent actually produce artifacts and track those in a consistent way across everyone? With the goal that as we refine our usage of these agents, we can update these documents, and then it disseminates to everyone. That way, we can all invest in a consistent foundation of how we're leveraging AI. And so if I was to make some improvements, if Jose was to make some improvements, we can all share those instead of it just us only investing in our own tooling. And one of the other cool things is we can also teach it about our platform capabilities. And so, Drew mentioned we've now got an activity service that is useful for capturing audit logs from our control plane. It can also capture control plane events emitted by, Kubernetes controller components or even any other systems that's integrated with the control plane. And then it can use activity policies to create, human readable activity summaries from all that raw data. And we can now teach AI that those tools are available. And then we can teach it how to actually leverage those tools to solve problems. Instead of it being an engineer having to go learn that tooling at a detailed level and really work with it, we can lean a lot on AI to handle that stuff for us. It's also got, platform or quota capabilities. So that's another thing that's we built into Milo. So it understands that that's available and how to work with it. And so we've got a few agents in here. There's one for architecture. There's an API developer focused agent, code reviewing agent, front end, SRE, tech writing, testing. And the whole goal of this is being able to use subagents to delegate tasks from the main agent down to agents that are focused on a single responsibility. The main benefit you get from that is context management, because the more and more polluted your context gets working with an agent, the higher risk your agent's going to start hallucinating. It's going to forget what it's thinking. It's going to forget what it's working through. And so being able to delegate to subagents just helps manage context a lot better, lets that agent go do the analysis. It can understand how to solve that problem a lot easier than some general purpose agent. And those agents all work together to solve a problem now instead of solely, using one agent to solve everything. And so these agents also have skills. And so, speaking towards architecture, one thing that we're trying to solidify around is leveraging C4 diagrams as our way of documenting our infrastructure or our software design. And so now there's a C4 skill that gives agents instructions on how we plan to use C4 that can incorporate things like what level of detail do you include in which level of diagram you're working on? What theming options do you use? How do you embed these diagrams into documentation? Because, GitHub does not allow you to use plant UML includes like this. You have to generate it manually. And so now the AI agent automatically knows that just by reading through the skill set and understanding how we expect it to write C4. And we've got similar things, similar capabilities for our controller patterns. So since we're building a lot on Kubernetes, we leverage the controller runtime very heavily with all of our software. And so this teaches, or this gives agents a skill that understands how it can use our multi-cluster runtime provider to integrate with all the virtualized project control planes that we're taking advantage of today, and the different patterns that it can follow. And there's things like FluxCD. We're using that for deployment automation. And so all these skills give our agents more and more context on how to solve these problems in a datum specific way. And we can continually add more skills as we introduce new features, new capabilities, or as even we just refine what our agents are capable of doing. I was working through a problem, I think a few weeks ago, where I was trying to add a feature flag to a system. And it ended up adding like a Boolean in a config somewhere. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. But the API server machinery that Kubernetes provides already has a feature flagging capability and baked into it. And our AI agent didn't know about that. And so once I was able to give it instructions, I had it create a skill file of like, hey, moving forward, anytime you need to add a feature flag to one of our backend software components, use this pattern. That way it knows now for the future how to take advantage of that functionality instead of reverting to some other approach for feature flagging. And so that's something else I'm baking into this as well, is like the idea of continual evolution and learning, where as you try to work with the agent over time, and either code reviews are catching things or you're having to make corrections to what the agent is doing. The idea is it can actually evolve from that knowledge. So it'll save files locally that it can use to understand, like, okay, the user deviated me this direction because of X, Y, Z, or I learned this during the code review process, working through X feature. And we can evolve those learnings back into updates to the AI agent to make it ideally make less issues moving forward. And then the other big thing that I added in here was the idea of a pipeline. So the software development life cycle is pretty consistent. Usually you go through discovery phase to understand, hey, what is it that we're trying to build? Why are we building it? What's the problem statement? What's the thing that users are going to care about most? Then you go through and figure out, okay, now that we understand what the problem is, like what are the potential ways we can try solving it? Then you keep going through it, you design it, you figure out what your UI is going to look like, what your API is going to look like. then you go down into implementation, the testing and review process, and deployment, documentation, announcements, change logs, all these different phases of this process. Uh, and so the pipeline command is really our way of taking it through that process, where you start with a feature request, and then a discovery agent goes and tries to figure out, okay, well, what question should I be asking the user about this thing that they're trying to solve? Once it's going to spit a markdown document out that you look at, you read through, you make sure you agree with everything it says. You add clarifications where you need to, and then once you agree on it, you send it to the next stage, and that's where a product planner is going to go through it. It's going to try to actually build out like user stories and product requirements documents, descriptions on like what it is it's trying to solve for. Um, and then you just keep taking it through the process. You review at every stage, try to make sure that you agree with what it's doing, why it's doing it, and the decisions it's making. Um, and then finally, at the very end, you're outputted with your feature that ideally has deployment automation, documentation, change logs, and everything you need to ship a feature from start to finish. And I'd say I've been using this pretty much daily ever since I created it about 4 weeks ago, and it's doing very well. There's definitely you got to course correct it quite a few times still, but it's been a very productive tool. And it's nice having something to keep reinvesting in. So it's just going to get better and better as we all collaborate on it. Um, Drew mentioned a Sentry upgrade that I did, I think, 2 weeks ago now. Uh, that was a little scary. So I basically gave I gave our SRE agent access to a sandbox environment that had uh, our a deployment of Sentry installed in it that was at our current version. And I had it simulate an upgrade from the current version we were at to a newer version, which was, um, I think it was two major versions behind. Plus, they had ripped out their Helm chart that included a base deployment of ClickHouse. And so I had the SRE agent go through and analyze what are all the changes that have been made to Sentry since the version we're running to the current version. It called out that we needed to use the Alternity ClickHouse operator now to install a ClickHouse cluster and do a data migration. And then I actually had it simulate what that upgrade would look like, and it went through. It upgraded to the latest version right before they removed ClickHouse. Then it added a new ClickHouse database cluster, did a database migration to move data from the old cluster to the new cluster, updated the Helm release configurations to point Sentry at the new cluster, and then finally upgraded to the very latest version. It took it like, I think, 2 days to get through that, basically because I had to hit approve, like 2,000 times. But it was pretty much handoff from start to finish, going through the entire upgrade end to end, which I thought was very interesting. We I did a similar thing last week with Citadel because I think we're a little behind on Citadel by a few major versions, and so we have a preview environment now that we can use to spin up our entire auth stack that includes our core control plane, Citadel, OpenFGA for policy enforcement authorization. And I had it spin up a new stack, simulate the upgrade to the latest version of Citadel, and confirm that from an auth and auth-z perspective, nothing in the platform would break. And it did it successfully. It took it a little bit to figure out exactly which configuration changes were needed in the Citadel chart in the new version. But once it figured that out, it retried the upgrade on a fresh copy of the environment, and everything went very smoothly. That was even that was even more surprising. So yeah, they were leaning into to Claude Code pretty heavily. If you've got questions, I'll try to answer them. I'm not a AI expert by any means. Still new to the table, but it's definitely been nice getting very productive with this tooling and leaning on it more heavily because uh, oftentimes now I have sessions that are going with Claudes that last or Claude agents that last hours without hallucinations instead of having to recreate sessions, after 20, 30 minutes, which has been very nice. Now I can have, usually 4 or 5 Claude agents working in the background on different things almost all day, just, working through different issues across different repositories. And then I just sit in more of a reviewer role, reviewing the work that it's doing instead of, being hands on keyboard, actually doing implementation on everything.
Great, Scott. Thanks for the overview. It's really exciting because I am, I waffle back and forth between AI skepticism and optimism, and it's definitely been an evolving journey. Like the change last year was pretty dramatic. For the beginning of the year, I was like, oh, this is not saving me any time and not helpful. To the end of the year, which is like, oh, now I'm able to actually do things that I really did not think I could that was possible with these tools. So uh, really exciting to not just leverage our own sort of individual productivity and kind of putting on the mech suit, but like to do it as a team and we're starting to really find ways to to help our whole team have a collective mech suit, be able to collectively be more productive and just tackle harder problems at bigger scale without a lot of the tedium that just burns time and introduces errors. So we still are very careful, I should say, but we're definitely getting further and further outside the box as to the kinds of things that we can do, and the tools are constantly evolving and improving as well, which is great. And then as Zach mentioned in chat, like this is, uh, it's both an unintended and intended benefit of doing all this in the open. I don't know that a lot of us have believed in open source for a long time, and the way that it connects humans together and the way that it's just more fun to build things that way. But it also happens to, give computers and robots all the tools they need to be able to build. So it's really exciting to see a confluence there of vision and strategy. That's it for sort of the prepared content. I would love to open the floor for any dialogue. If anyone wants to, if anyone has a question or other thoughts on any of this?
Has anybody released the minions on their desktop in OpenClaw?
I have not yet. That's my next phase.
I'm kind of curious from anybody else here because I had a colleague in the office, somebody who desk surfs with us, and he was not a developer, but was moving real fast on putting OpenClaw and everything. I was like, just be careful, bro.
So
So I'm kind of curious, right? Like what people are doing about that.
Can you hear me? Am I making noise? Okay.
I hear
Now
you.
we can. Now.
Sorry, I was having a problem with my mic there. I wanted to ask Scott a question for a couple of minutes here. So I found in Cursor a couple of times I've gotten stuck in a very long loop of a bug where the troubleshooting steps it'll take me through will be like 10, 12 steps in the process. And I get right back to where the start was, and I've got to sort of go in and break that myself. Do you think Claude is better at avoiding that, or is it because you've given it enough context, you can set it off into do stuff? It doesn't sound like you've been running into that sort of problem, and I run into it fairly frequently with Cursor.
I would say I ran into that pretty frequently before I started using subagents. once I started switching to subagents to just help manage context a lot better, I'd run into that a lot less now. And I can keep my main agent focused on like what I want to execute on, and its little minion agents can go off and actually do the thing, and it just basically sits up and orchestrates them.
And was your choice of Claude because you'd been using that before, or
Uh,
how did you land on Claude being the right choice?
so I was using Cursor occasionally. My Cursor was my main IDE previously, and that's when my AI coding was mainly in the UI, actually still coding. Then I swapped to Cursor agents, and when I was using Cursor agents, I was primarily using the UI as a review editor and not something I was actually fully typing in. And so when I started playing with Claude Code, that let me continue using VS Code like I was used to, without paying for Cursor, and just lean fully into Claude Code because it was my agent and I wasn't using a lot of the tab completion stuff that Cursor was getting. And like a lot of times, if I was trying to do like typing in markdown documents in Cursor, it was kind of annoying me that it was like always prompting me to autofill. And like sometimes it would hallucinate. And so I just found that like Claude plus VS Code was a lot better for my workflow. Because I also have like I'll have like four different terminal windows open in a VS Code window, and each of those terminals will have a different Claude agent running in them, doing different things in that repository. So I think it's primarily a workflow choice.
I started setting it up yesterday. I'm excited to work with the stuff that you've done.
Yeah, definitely. Let me know if you have any feedback.
So I read this thing, and this might be moving into more like opinion and uninformed opinion versus qualified question here. But I read that like one of the reasons why Claude is like so good at code is because like especially sysadmin tasks and related is because it's been like super well trained on the kind of most open software ever, right? Which is Linux. And I'm kind of curious what people are finding in their own work about that, right? Which is like, are you ending up leaning into more open systems because the AI stuff is better with it? You know, the good docs matter, you know, kind of good public repos, open API specs, you know, other thing like frameworks that are open. I mean, maybe people are doing that already. So this is like not at all a contentious thing and it's just like an accelerant. But I'm kind of curious around how people who are in the SaaS business, hosted things are dealing with that. Like, are you trying to expose stuff more to your end users and partners and whatnot, and e.g. like to be slurped up by these LLMs to learn, or is it really just about enabling the tools to help you internally to build that? I mean, we have a strong viewpoint, but I think that's because Datum's value, at least what we're trying to do, is our value. Although some ears will burn because our value isn't actually in writing software; it's in running it. And so, kind of curious what SaaS companies are thinking about that. SaaS multiples not as good right now. All right. Anybody cares to talk about it? Find me for a beer later.
It's exciting.
Where can people download the desktop app?
Go download it.
Link in chat.
I have not yet unleashed OpenClaw on anything. I've used it in limited problems, hooked up to a small subset of things, and it's interesting.
My first experience with Cursor was pointing at a new open source repository and telling it, "Oh, just do whatever you want to get this installed on my system." And somewhere along the way, it deleted the path on the system, and I couldn't boot Windows anymore. Didn't do whatever you want apparently didn't mean the same thing to me as it did to Cursor. So I had a quick learning lesson on that.
There's a cool company called Zoe that you can get like uh, a cloud-based VM essentially
Yeah.
that does a
Hosted
lot of,
desktops are back.
yeah, it's basically a, you know, an OpenClaw like thing that you can run in its own isolated environment and you can sort of control what you connect it to. So I've played with that a bit just so I don't have to unleash it on my systems.
I mean, this feels to me like the ultimate reason for me to like figure out how to run Nixos on my desktop somehow. So I could just like snapshot all things until OpenClaw mucks it up and then I roll back.
Which you can, for
I'm
sure.
excited. I'm excited for the wave that comes after the VM like wave. Like, we're seeing obviously the shift of them running fully autonomously in these, Linux, Mac, whatever environments. But what's interesting is what happens when you put an agent like that into a Kubernetes environment, where it now has full control over the infra layer as well. Like, there's so much more that it could do than, because if you're in Windows, you can only do so much. But like if you have a full cluster and you can deploy software yourself and build the entire distributed system yourself, I think that's going to make it really interesting, right?
I think it's going to be a really weird step, Zach. I think there's a lot of stuff that we're not anticipating yet that's going to come out of that step. Like I feel
For
like
sure.
it's a event horizon that we can't see past yet. And or, um, like a year from now or so, it'll all look very different than it does today. And 5 years from now, the people that are coming into this industry won't have any idea what it looked like when we were starting out. Change is exciting. Makes it hard to sleep.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting side effects of all this. Is like, uh, before in the old times, when you got stuck, right, you'd have to just like go for a walk and think about this error message that you got and, think about your system, like, have the right design. You don't have to do any of that anymore. You just yell at the agent to keep figuring it out. And so um, you basically never have to leave your chair, which is like a whole new problem.
Or
I do worry
If
about
I figured that out.
the other side of it is I got a friend that is talking to his agents through his cell phone all the time. So it feels like a big chunk of his work, he doesn't have to be at his desk.
Yeah, yeah.
He's just flowing into through his phone into conversation with the computer. So it's interesting times. Getting closer to Star Trek.
for me the big fear with an SRE uptime reliability background is the losing the human brains that have a full model of the running system in their head. I do worry that as the code itself and the function of the system becomes less comprehensible to people because we don't need to because the machine writes it for us because we're writing software at a higher abstraction level using natural human language instead of the machine languages learned. I'm worried that when stuff breaks at 3 a.m., the people who know how it works might not know anymore. And that maybe Drew's right. We can just beat Claude, feelingless Claude, into fixing it.
I mean,
at 3 in
do
the
you know how
morning.
the Linux kernel works?
No, but that's also part of why we've moved away from running things on Linux, right? Like Linux being a dumpster fire in the middle part of the last decade is part of what pushed us all into containerization. And yeah.
And then we just count on Linux working because I guess it works most of the time.
Well, it reduces the blast radius to a single instance of a single application. Certainly, yeah. It's all trade-offs.
In Linux's case, somebody understands how it all works. There's at least a human that's doing some quality control.
That's anyway. We
Yeah,
don't.
that's where the human element of it gets interesting, right? Because, we've always said docs, tests, issues are all good. I think no one's going to disagree with us there. But like if AI is only going to be getting better, like we've seen the curve, it's like 2 to 3x improvement every 3 months. It's like at some point, at least for my work, I'm like, hey, read the code first to understand what you're doing, and then, it solves the problem. It's like at some point, like it's going to be able to capture all that context in one session and not need any like other human input. It can just literally go out and read, build up a massive, population of context and do its work. So it's going to be interesting to see like what does the human element look like going forward? Do we continue to do what we've been doing in GitHub and tickets and issues, or is there some new model that we'll all start building into?
I mean, GPT's new version of Git, right?
That's right.
It seems like a lot right now, and certainly not purpose built for what's happening.
Yeah, I saw some rage posts about, people complaining about GitHub, and they're like, "We're just building a new one."
Yeah, I think
Go for it.
Microsoft is even pitching internally a new Git. Everyone, I think there's an open source version of it out there.
Well, there's the whole Codeberg, or what's the thing that runs Codeberg? I can't remember the name. There's that whole movement that's happening. Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to build things now, which opens the door to a lot of options. Well,
I'm super interested in about the bits you talked about, kind of the design and solution part of what you went through, Scott, actually. And it'd be uh, uh, just what you were saying as well, Zach, about the kind of human element. Like, it seems to me, you know, there's so much machine power out there, and not and like knowledge and things that these AI models can pull from. But like, how do you take it to the next level? How do you make sure it's kind of differentiated, is creating solutions that are kind of really unique to like your organization and your customer base and your user behaviors and needs? It's like, great, it could probably, it can definitely do all of the like beautiful basics, and that gets you to a good place. But how do we like feed it some more, maybe there's opportunities to feed it some more kind of custom behaviors and more kind of nuance to be able to take that a bit further as well. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely see where that goes.
Yeah.
It's very good at copying existing behavior. Like a lot of the Milo Foundation that we need to do is really just like, hey, like we need these building blocks that really every provider needs. That there's kind of well-defined ways of doing these things that are already solve problems. So a lot of that is just, make this building block. But I think you're right. It's like, how do you differentiate your product on top of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, if the cost of code is going to zero, everybody can build anything. How do you actually build the best thing for your customers is what's really the most important thing you have to be answering always.
Right. Yeah, I know Kevin and I have liked pencil.dev recently as like an exploratory tool for just mocking up UX as a way of prototyping, because it's super cheap and it's easy to throw away. And we don't have to now waste our time or anyone else's time just thinking about how to design these things. We can just have a brainstorming session where we kind of talk into a UX building tool, and then all just think about how we'd want to solve these problems. And like ideally, we come away with something that's like, yeah, it's not 100% right, but it's a good place to start polishing from, where it's directionally where we want to go.
Yeah, nice.
All righty.
I wonder what this will look like when Claude Code PRs cost $20 each. You guys see that the trial balloon on pricing they floated 2 days ago? It's an interesting price because it's still worth it, but it does put friction on it.
Zero anymore.
All righty. Well, that will do it for this month's community huddle. Our next one is on April 8th. So tune in. Anything else you want to add, Drew?
No, it's great. Thanks all for being here.
That's our desktop app. We're doing like daily updates, like to fix, including the thing to do daily updates. But it's built with Diaxis, and it's been really great to see the team move really rapidly on it. My experience having an app out in the wild that actually people have to update. So let us know, play with the tunnels. Lots more going on exposing that, but really would love feedback from people who had different use cases. Yeah.
All righty. Well, everyone have a good day. We'll see you at the next one.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sylvia. Thanks, everyone.